The news comes from sources inside Iran. The Islamic regime has issued an order to carry out the execution of Christian pastor Youcef Nadarkhani. Nadarkhani was imprisoned for his faith and sentenced to die for leaving Islam, but he says he never was a Muslim. The White House and the U.S. State Department issued a statement condemning Iran for its persecution of the pastor and urging others to demand his release. Franklin Graham told Greta Van Susteren on Fox News President Obama should do more to help Nadarkhani.
The president could call for a prayer meeting at the White House. He could make a statement. We apologized to the Afghans because a Quran was mistakenly burned, and this Quran had been used in smuggling out messages out of Bagram prison. And he apologizes to the Afghans after an Afghan soldier killed 2 Americans. But why doesn't he speak out? He could use the power of the White House to call pastors to gather at the White House and have a prayer meeting for this guy, but he hasn't done it.
Nadarkhani has been in prison more than 860 days. He's rejected offers to gain his freedom by recanting his Christian faith.
Jordan, Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice is working with attorneys in Iran to help Pastor Youcef. He joins us now from our bureau in the nation's capital. Jordan, how soon might this execution take place?
Well, George, if you look back, the last time something this public happened to a Christian pastor in Iran, it was 1990. And in that case, what happened was very similar to the kind of timeline we have this week. The legal team in Iran was trying to get documents from the court. Things had stalled. Remember, we know this case went to the Ayatollah, and the court didn't really want to issue an order. The Supreme Court did not overturn the death sentence, so they took the appeal. They sent it back to say, was he Muslim enough? And they said, well, he had Muslim blood, so that may be enough, but they still went to the Ayatollah. And in that case in 1990, it kind of delayed for a couple of weeks, and then they didn't get the actual certificate of death or the execution order on paper. And why? Until they got the body. And these attorneys, who are his attorneys in Iran, this is their specialty. So they would never, his legal team, contact us on Monday with this news. We worked on it for 24 hours. And I think, George, look back at what's happened since we've covered this story, starting in early fall, late summer of last year. The White House, State Department took much more time before engaging. Now, 2 days after we talked about it on CBN News and released this information, you have statements coming from the most powerful office in the world.
What is the appeal process here, Jordan? Is there one at this point?
You know, his team, I mean, again, they're specialists. His attorney, remember, has been sentenced to 9 years in jail. He's a Muslim who represents a lot of Christians like this who are convicted and usually not sentenced to death, but for a number of years in prison. Pastor Nadarkhani has been in jail as of today, 865 days. And they're still looking because it already went to the Supreme Court once. So he got an appeal to the Supreme Court, and they didn't overturn the death sentence. They said the lower court must determine, was he a Muslim at the age of majority? And their issue there was he was Muslim enough because his parents were of Muslim origin. So it's a very troubling situation. The biggest, I guess the best thing we can do is, just like in September and October, is not rely as much on their legal system because it's not like any other in the world, but rely on the world's pressure and attention. And it's starting now, and we can see that happening again.
And to that very point, is the United States doing enough? I mean, the White House has spoken out, the State Department, but do we need to do more? And if so, what?
I think we, can do more. People can do more. I think there is a danger, George, and a legitimate one, of making this U.S. versus Iran. We look back and we know September, October, the U.S. was still trying to negotiate with Iran on a nuclear program. A much more defiant regime right now, a much more dangerous situation. But there are countries around the world, Brazil, for instance, 90% of their population is Christian. They have a very good diplomatic relationship with Iran. The United States, behind the scenes, could use a country like Brazil, work with them on putting pressure. I think that's what we need, is the world coming together. It won't be one specific world leader. But the good news is this White House statement, and I understand what Reverend Graham is talking about. I'm calling for prayer. Everyone's praying around the world. But this White House statement makes sure that we now know that Iranian regime, for the second time, knows that the United States president knows exactly what's going on with this case. And that is a strong message to send to the Iranian regime and to the Ayatollah himself.
Okay, keeping track of this very, very important is Jordan Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice. Thank you so much. And hundreds of thousands of people are taking part in a Twitter campaign to free Pastor Youcef. You can sign up at the American Center for Law and Justice website. Find that link at our website, cwnews.org.